Hi, it's Llarold. Season 1 of the War Within is slightly past the midpoint, and player numbers appear to be trending downward. The best metric we have for this is Mythic Plus runs per week, and they are a regular topic of discussion on the various WoW subreddits. At this point, those numbers are down pretty significantly compared to this point in Dragonflight or Shadowlands. Life cycles around 20 to 25%, maybe more. And just like when the game was at its breaking point in Shadowlands patch 9.1.5, Blizzard is deploying some substantial buffs to the problem points in the game as an attempt to fix the issues that are driving players away, or at least driving the players who are sticking around completely insane. So let's look at the problem, see what's coming up, and consider how it's going to help. Let's get into it, but first, like and subscribe. Alright, so let's hit on the successes and problems of the current state of the game, and bear in mind these are my opinions, so you're allowed to disagree. I give you permission to disagree with me. This is just what I see as being right and wrong with the game so far in Season 1. First off, the raid is fantastic. I have almost zero complaints about the state of the raid. It might be my favorite ever, which is crazy to say, but it's definitely a top contender. I think the final 3 fights are probably the best 3-boss combo they've ever had in finishing off a raid. That sounds like high praise. It is, but actually considering the final 3 bosses of a lot of good raids, and you realize that nearly all of them have a real stinker in there, and I don't feel like this raid does. Second, and much more importantly, Mythic Plus is harder now for the average weekly completion pug group than it was with the old affix system. Moving away from all the old affixes I thought was a good idea, but moving away from them to a system that punishes deaths 3 times as hard and has fortified and tyrannical in every single week is an increase in difficulty, and the new Xal'atath affixes that Blizzard added have been more annoying than the affixes they replaced. I didn't like bolstering, I didn't like bursting, but they required a lot less attention than the foot lady showing up and spawning a bunch of balls I have to move around and soak during a boss's main damage phase. Also, they only recorded 1 voice line for each of her mechanics, and I know I've mentioned that in other videos, but she spams it and it's very annoying. Also, they only recorded 1 voice line for each of her mechanics. Completely insane, isn't it? It's stunning to me that no one realized how annoying that would be. Also, they only recorded 1 voice line for blah blah blah. Now, for what it's worth, Mythic Plus is more consistent for high-level key pushers than ever before, and this has generally been seen as a great change. So high-level pushers are happy with the state of affixes, more or less, but average Mythic Plus players are not. Mythic Plus is also much less rewarding than it has been in a long time, and no one is happy about that. Gear progression is way slower than it has been at pretty much any point in the history of modern WoW. In Dragonflight Season 2, when the new gear system was first designed and put out, the weekly cache could give level 2 Myth Track items as Mythic Plus cache rewards, and the Myth Track was only 4 upgrades long, so hypothetically you could get items that only needed 2 total upgrades to be maxed out, 30 crests and you're done. The current system only gives level 1 upgrade Myth Track items at best, and the Myth Track is now 6 upgrades long, so you are guaranteed to require 5 upgrades per slot, meaning that even if you get lucky every single week and get a piece of gear you want, you're going to need 5 upgrades to that piece in order to cap it. And with the cap on crests each week set to 90, that means you are going to spend 75 of those crests on a single piece of gear each week. That's assuming you actually get a piece of gear to upgrade, which you know how the cache is. This was made worse by the crafted gear costing a full 90 crests in order to craft at the mythic level, meaning it would consume an entire week's worth of crests. All of this combined to have a massive stalling effect on the gearing process. So it's never been harder to gear up, the amount of time investment required has never been higher, and you combine that with a dungeon pool that players are largely not big fans of, and affixes that people don't like, and people have gotten tired of it. And I can't really blame them. This is a shame because I think the state of classes is really good. All of the tanks except for Brewmaster Monk are extremely fun to play. I am having a great time playing DK, Paladin, and Warrior, and I don't even mind Necrotic Wake or whatever, but having to run, no cap, 100 dungeons in order to catch up my Druid is just such a hilariously tall order that I don't even want to start. I would rather play something else. Just like in Shadowlands, it's clear that this is a game that isn't respecting my time as a player. That was the standard criticism then. You could just say that on Reddit and get a million upvotes, and it's a real bummer that we're right back here so quickly. This is the feedback that Blizzard has been getting since the beta, really, and they are finally acting on it, and I think their response is actually pretty good. They are giving the people what they want, what we want. So let's get into it. So I'm going to start with this blue post from Kaivax in which he talks about the changes that they are making in the upcoming patch 11.0.7, that will affect Harbinger crests, specifically Gilded Harbinger crests. And they are pretty significant buffs. They are making it so that currency rewards for Mythic Plus dungeons, as he says right here, will now scale by the keystone level, so that you will get a substantially increased amount of crests per Mythic Plus dungeon that you complete. And if you complete a dungeon but you don't hit the timer, you now only lose 4 crests. So instead of going from 12 on a success and 5 on a failure, meaning you would have to fail 3 dungeons in order to get 1 upgrade, if you complete a 10 on time, you get 16. That's more than enough to do a full upgrade just from 1 dungeon, and then you get 12 if you miss. So if you miss on a plus 12 dungeon, which is pretty hard, you still get a full upgrade worth of crests just for having completed it. I think this is pretty great. I think it also lines up with the difficulty. Like, timing a plus 8 is easier than missing a plus 12. Yeah, I just really think it is. Or even missing like a plus 10. And so I do think that the reward for missing but still completing some of these higher difficulty pieces of content should be higher than successfully completing something that is much easier. Additionally, the number of crests required to craft a piece of gear has been reduced from 90 down to 60. Additionally, the number of Harbinger crests required to purchase the upgrade bags, the trade-up bags, once you no longer need, say, heroic crests, that is going from 90 down to only 45. So you'll be able to buy twice as many upgrade crests as well if you're doing content that you no longer get upgrades from. I think that's good. It probably should have just been like that from the start. And then maybe the best of all the changes is that Harbinger of the Gilded, that's the achievement that once you have full maxed out gear in every single slot, all of your upgrades for your entire account will cost 10 crests instead of 15. That only requires item level 636 in every slot instead of 639. This is a change I didn't think they would make, and I'm really glad that they have, because it makes it so that you can craft pieces in slots where you're just not getting lucky. Like, I would say you're just never getting gloves for some reason. You can just craft gloves, and there you go. Now you can fully upgrade all of your other characters for 33% less. It really does make the whole system much less painful. And this is exactly what they've said here. They want challenge and reward to be directly correlated. Up until now, if you were trying to maximize your crest income, you just wanted to run the lowest difficulty that awarded the desired crest type, and that just doesn't really make sense. It makes more sense for running 10s to give more than doing 8s. It just does. And this is a really good change, and it is also, as Kaivax said later on in here, this will be the starting point for Season 2. So this is a really great set of changes that I think everyone liked that. I don't think anybody has anything negative to say about this at all. Now, there has been one bit of criticism about this, and that's just simply not including raid drops, and I think it probably should also apply to raids as well, but I can see the idea that raid bosses take 6 to 8 minutes on average with an organized group, assuming you don't wipe, and Mythic Plus dungeons take 25 to 45 minutes, especially if you're pugging. And you can also include the time spent finding people you might look at, and that might be close to an hour to run a single Mythic Plus dungeon when you count starting at finding people all the way until you're looting the chest at the end. I would like more crests from raids, or just fewer crests to upgrade, but I can live with just getting this. Another big change that will need to happen is the complete annihilation of Valor Stones as a currency at all. I don't expect to see that in this patch, but I would love to see that in Season 2. I just think they're really dumb, and they don't need to exist. They certainly don't need a tiny little cap of 2,000 when big two-handed weapon upgrades cost 400 of them per upgrade. They're dumb. All right, let's get into the rest of the patch notes for patch 11.7, and I'm going to start with the racial bonus update that they're doing. These are basically just a little collection of racial bonus updates to kind of underplayed races or a lot of heritage races that haven't really had their racial bonuses updated in a long time. The Draenei racial Gift of the Naru goes from a 3-minute cooldown down to a 2-minute cooldown. I think that's pretty good. I've always liked the look of Draenei too, so if I still played Alliance, which I don't, I probably would switch some characters over to Draenei, but I don't, so I'm not going to. I think Lightforged Draenei historically had a really strong bonus. They just a active skill that does some damage, and then that's seen some nerfs. And this is going to kind of buff it back up for kind of small scale AoE. It seems okay. I definitely could see Lightforged Draenei being an option for parsing as well, but Dwarf's crit damage bonus is pretty insurmountable, and then Stoneform is just one of the best defensive bonuses you could possibly get. High Mountain Torrent's Rugged Tenacity, this effect being increased by 50%. This is a tiny little flat damage reduction that they get. This means almost nothing. I do like that Magar Orc is going to be locked to only increasing one of your 2 highest secondary stats. This means that they'll be about on par with regular orcs instead of being, wildly good or bad if it chooses a bad stat. Nightborn is particularly notable because Sunset and I leveled Nightborn ages ago because we thought their heritage armor was cool, but their racial bonus is a 3-minute cooldown that does a less than 1 auto attack's worth of damage and a terrible slow, and so they have made it into a really strong slow, but it's still on a 3-minute cooldown, and now it's going to do about 2 auto attacks worth of damage as AoE. So still absolutely terrible, probably the worst racial bonus in the entire game, but they look cool, and they get a mailbox on a 5 or 10-minute cooldown as a racial skill, so that part is cool. Can't really say that this does anything to make Nightborn good, though. I think Void Elf is probably a big winner here. I definitely think that I'll see more Void Elves in Raid for people who don't mind being Alliance. The upgrade to Spatial Rift, making it just a lot easier to use as a real blink skill, seems pretty good. And then their baseline Entropic Embrace, their kind of damage increase used to be just like occasional extra damage procs, and then it didn't work with absorbs. Now it is going to be an occasional proc that gives you 5% healing and damage for the next 12 seconds. I think that seems more consistent, and the fact that it'll work with absorbs means it'll actually be good for healers. Vulpera getting a bit of damage and healing on Bag of Tricks seems kind of like whatever. It does give a really powerful single target move speed slow, but that's really not all that useful, I think, in most PvE content. Similar to Nightborn, I could see this being game changing in PvP to get an 80% AoE slow, and I could see that being the same for Vulpera, 80% single target slow. Sounds pretty good in PvP, but that's not really my bag, so I don't know. Worgen getting a bit of a move speed increase, making Dark Flight work a little bit better is fine. And then finally, I think currently all Zandalari trolls just stick with the Paku bonus, and it seems like now they're going to have some decent options. I also like that the Regenerating will no longer just break instantly if a dot ticks on you. I always thematically liked Zandalari trolls a lot, but I felt like I could never use the Regenerating bonus at all unless I was on a Paladin and I could Divine Shield and then press it. That was pretty much the only time I felt like I could ever make use of it. So I like all of these bonuses. I think they're okay. Some of them are a little undertuned, but I don't really think they're going to do much to break the incredible stranglehold that Blood Elves and Dwarves have on the competitive high-level state of the game. There's nothing here that is remotely competitive with Arcane Torrent or Stoneform or the crit damage bonus that Dwarves get. And I don't really think anything is going to change from these, but I do think they're nice. I'd love to see more of this kind of thing in every single patch that comes out, just to kind of make it so that we don't feel like Blizzard has forgotten that races exist in WoW. All right, and now I'm going to talk about the other content that's coming in the patch, the new zone. Now, they show off an island map here, and they show off this flying mount, and what's funny about that is they have given us sort of a roadmap for what they expect us to do across the 6 weeks. Get this new ring, play around with it, walk around on the seafloor, upgrade some powers, but then the final line here says that after the 6th week, after completing the week 6 quest line, you get the passive ability to control the winds, allowing you to take flight on Siren Isle. And having read around and looked around a whole bunch, that's right, they are intending for there to be no flying for the first 6 weeks of this new content. It is hilarious to me that they are showing off this admittedly cool flying mount in the promotional materials, but then also saying you're not going to fly there for a month and a half. And there's the Blizzard I know and love. It's like they can't help but shoot themselves in the foot somewhere along the way. As a WoW player for, I guess I could say 20 years now, I don't like having to jump through hoops, or I guess fly through hoops, or walk through hoops, to reacquire a basic quality of life feature that's been part of the game for 18 years now. And on that note, the new No Flying Island is just absolutely not doing it for me at all. Just a 0 out of 100 on the hype scale. Now, there have also been a bit of class tuning changes kind of thrown in at the last minute here. Unholy DK is getting a pretty substantial buff. Havoc Demon Hunter's getting a little bit of a single target damage buff. Marksmanship Hunter's getting some AoE damage increases, and Affliction Warlock is getting some pretty good damage bonuses as well. Also, don't forget that Holy Fire, Holy Priest damage increase. Certainly couldn't leave that out. And then finally, there is also a powerful new ring being added in the quest line on the new zone. It's called Circe's Circlet, and it has a bunch of customizable little bonuses that you can put in, and it seems like at least for now, the best bonuses are just simply like flat primary stat and flat secondary stats. Not really all that exciting. Okay, so let's just take a step back and think about how this set of changes will work in terms of bringing people back and helping bolster the disappointing state of player numbers right now. And I don't think it really will, at least for the time being. I think the crest changes are terrific. I think the racial bonuses are very conservative, and I think the ring is fine. But players come back for cool new content. They don't really come back for a fix to a problematic gearing system. I think the issue here is that when you announce a new piece of content is going to be inconvenient and not allow flying for a month and a half, and then the reward from it has planned obsolescence as a core feature, that doesn't really draw in the crowds. The crest changes, they're great, but they're a quality of life improvement for the people who've been slogging through the muck all this time. Cool new content brings people back. And because this new content is intentionally inconvenient, and it's even being sold as such, I don't personally feel that a cool factor is really there in the slightest. Now, with that being said, I do think this sets up Season 2 as a revitalizing moment for the state of WoW. Blizzard has the time and the opportunity to make significant improvements to the state of Mythic Plus and the affix system, and these crest buffs are just a good way of laying the groundwork for a wholesale rework to Mythic Plus, but they are really just the first step in a much larger process. Now, I need to add in here that the War Within Season 2's scheduled dungeon roster looks awful, truly abominable, worse than the current season by a country mile. So this cannot be all. Blizzard does need to do more if they want the next season to be a significant success. They have to do more. They also need to not slip on the same banana peel of making the outdoor content deliberately inconvenient in the same way that they are with the new island. And given that there's a lot of talk of a new special ground mount for the new zone, I'm a little worried that flying may just be completely disabled in the new zone. I like the idea of a ground mount with special skills, and I predicted it way back in the middle of Dragonflight, so I am optimistic, but I'm also a little bit nervous that they're right back to their Warlords of Draenor and Shadowlands ways of taking flight away from players every single time there's new content, and I think that would be a massive mistake. Okay, let's wrap things up. First off, I am super excited about the crest changes. All of the content that I care about, which is raids and Mythic Plus dungeons, is going to be more fun and more rewarding. I hope there are more changes to the Mythic Plus system in Season 2 because this isn't enough, but it is a really good start. Delves feel completely forgotten, and I deliberately chose not to mention them until this point to demonstrate that. I like the difficulty of max level delves. They are hard as hell, but the reward is just not there at all. I don't understand what purpose they serve in the current state of the game. Making them be a challenging way to solo farm mythic crests sounds good, but they're not that. They're nothing. I'm not excited about the new island, but I'm still gonna do it. I'm gonna ride around on a ground mount saying this sucks, this sucks, this sucks the whole time. And to be honest, I'm hoping to be proven wrong. I hope that it's so good that I don't even notice I'm not flying and I have to eat my words. That would be great. This is the first and final time in my life that I would prefer to be wrong, but if and when I'm not, I hope Blizzard gets a bunch of feedback from like-minded people who are in agreement with me, and they actually listen to that feedback in designing future outdoor content, especially the content that is being added in Season 2. And finally, I hope for more racial tuning in future patches. I don't really expect it, but I do think it would be nice to lessen up the absolute stranglehold that Blood Elves and Dwarves have on the high-level endgame right now. I would also love to see some tank changes, but I'm already used to waiting on that, and hopefully we'll see them in Season 2. Alright, that's it. Thanks for watching. Bye.